Walk with us beyond the front door. Sit with us a while as we explore into the wisdom of one of the wise women of our times. Do you know what a shaman is, what they do, what they explore? Therese Dorer knows. She is a shaman. She is a medium, a spiritual teacher, a wise woman, connecting to other women and helping them to find their own empowerment, connecting with spirit and learning from them, talking to deceased loved ones and finding out what they know, what their journey has been about, and what do they want us to know, examining insight into dying a good death and the little deaths. Therese Dorer discovered her spiritual gifts, her mediumship and shaman work after a lifetime almost of not knowing these gifts were accessible to her. So we'll start at the beginning of her childhood and see what the contributing factors and insights that helped her to get where she is today, sharing her gifts with us so generously. It is a privilege and an honor to sit with her, to ask the questions that are always in my curious mind, and have her so willingly and clearly share the answers, the insights that she has. Thank you for taking the time to open your own mind and your heart. And if you listen carefully, you might hear a heart speak. Let us begin.
Therese Dorer, it's such a pleasure to be exploring with you today.
Thank you. I'm excited about where we're going to go today.
It's always an adventure. So I want to, as I've been doing with several of my guests recently, I really want to explore some of the journey that women go through in particular. In the last 50 years or so, we've certainly seen a lot of progress in a lot of avenues. I'm wondering, as the little girl, Therese, when you were just, in elementary school, what was your big dream, and did you think it was possible?
That's such a lovely question. I think I've been very blessed in my life. One of the things I remember about elementary school is we had this one teacher, and she really encouraged us. We would write our own plays, and then we would produce them. And she was even so kind as to have other classrooms come in and watch us. And I think it really gave me confidence. And so I remember this little play that we would put together, and we would get together and we do the dialogue, and it kind of progressed from there. In high school, I was the social club person, would plan dances, school dances, and so I've always been someone who loved to organize, loved to be involved with people and community. And when I kind of track it back, it really did start back when, they say when we're 10, we are our most authentic. And that was grade 5. So I would have been around 10, 11. And I really thank that teacher because we had so much fun. And of course I got confidence.
Yes. Well, and those are the teachers that we never forget, right? It's like they're the people who just help us to form ideas about what our world is like and what we can expect and opportunities. And I can see that formation of you as a little girl sort of going, yeah, look what can happen. We can do these things. So as a woman in the world that you were growing up in, where did you grow up? In Kamloops or?
I grew up in a community, Chase, which is about 36 miles from Kamloops. And I was lucky enough to grow up on a farm right by the river. And so, part of that was I learned to ride a horse. I remember my dad brought this horse home in grade 7. He said, "You can ride." And I went, "I can?" So I started to ride a horse. Again, confidence, right? Learning how to ride a horse. Because we lived on a farm, if we wanted to go anywhere, we kind of had to find our way. So ride our bikes and find friends that way. So I think there was that kind of independence piece for me right from the very beginning. Yeah.
And also sounds like you were in your environment grounded. Like in your environment, with animals and with the earth, and growing up on a farm, that kind of, rural?
The place that I grew up is such a beautiful place. It's right on the South Thompson River. And I always laugh because I only moved 36 miles from Chase to Kamloops. And Kamloops has two rivers meet here. It's called, it means the meeting of the water, Kamloopa. That's the indigenous name for Kamloops. And so South Thompson, North Thompson meet here. And so, that's really a powerful conjuncture of those two waters. And I moved right by a river. And so I live by a river now, and I lived by a river when I was younger. So you're right. Nature has always been a huge part of my
yeah. I noticed that with, themes in people's lives where, looking back, you could see it more than if you, just think where you are, you don't think about it. When you look back, you can sort of connect the dots on how you were getting to where you are today, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it sounds like you were empowered. You had people around you to support you to move through on your path. And so, because the work you do today as a shaman, as a spiritual consultant, a channeler, a medium, all those kinds of things, I feel like, that's pretty, some people think that's woo-woo, but I feel like that's really grounded, because you're grounded in the interdimensionality that we really are living on. We're not just living in one dimension, although we feel like we are. That's the physical is where that's what we relate to mostly. That's what's promoted to us. But there's a lot of other parts of our body, our physical, our mental, our emotional, our energetic body, and the earth is the same. So it feels to me like you stayed close and connected to the earth and the energy. And do you feel that way?
I do. I love it. I love to hear you talk, because it's like listening to myself. You're saying the things that I tell people, and I love to hear it paraphrased back to me, because then I think, hey, that's so lovely. And honestly, we don't even know each other very well, so this is just delightful.
I'm picking it up from the collective.
Well, I have a lovely friend. She was a spiritual coach for me when I first started to meditate and started to see things and kind of open up. And so I was so blessed to be able to work with her. And she used to say, one of the reasons you can do this, Therese, is because you're grounded. And I really didn't understand what she meant by that until I started to meet a lot of other people who do this work. And comparisons are really odious, but there are people who are very comfortable with accessing those higher realms, but they're not really grounded in their bodies. And that could cause some big disconnects. So I've always been really grateful that I feel grounded. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's, an area that I really think would be important to talk about, is because it feels like since maybe 1989, the harmonic convergence, changes in the energy and what we could access, we have more tools today, but people are not given the instructions on how to use the tools, or there isn't the wisdom. I'll give you an example. I was talking to another spiritual teacher who is a wise woman as well. And I was telling her about my experience when my son died, and that I had been interviewed for a woman's talk show, and she wanted to know my story. And because it seemed like at the time, it was 2012, my son was killed in a vehicle accident. And so I, at that time, had a very different experience than a lot of other people who had the experience of a child dying, or in my own family, I had a lot of deaths, but and my brother drowned when he was quite young. So, but when my son died, I had what can only be explained to me as a very spiritual experience. I had a very liberating experience, a very eye-opening experience. And so I thought this is why the woman asked to interview me. And so I was sharing it. And I explained to her that, it was euphoric. It was an experience beyond what I ever expected, and it awakened in me a whole new understanding about death that I hadn't had before. I realized there was no death, and that it was kind of a gift. There were gifts in the tragedy.
Yeah.
So, but as I explained it to her, I could see, and she said, well, I'm a psychic, and I can't believe that you can accept that like that. I can't believe that you're that's just not possible for a mother to experience that like that, and to have. And I thought, how could you be a psychic and she was a medium and not understand the fullness of what I'm telling you here is my experience. It's not somebody else's. I'm not telling you second or third hand. I'm telling you, I had this happen to me. And and in the end, it was interesting because we chatted for a long time, and she never aired it. And she told me that it was one thing or another had happened, and she just didn't air it. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So I was sharing that with another spiritual wise person, and she said, that's the difference between when you have the psychic gift, but you have no spirituality. You have you don't get the whole, so, that's a long way of me getting to that point, but it is an important part for people to understand. Just because you're a psychic, or you can read tarot, or you can have these experiences of seeing things or phenomena or whatever it is, does not mean you understand it or have gained that awareness of what it all means. And that is really important. You can give people a lot of misinformation if you haven't done your work.
I cannot. Yes. A big, huge yes. Absolutely. I mean, when my dad died was really when I opened up. And again, it's interesting lately, what I've called that is it's a good death. And what I mean by that is there's just a little story I want to quickly share with you. In Peru, when I was in Peru, there was a shaman there, and he told us that he was training to be a shaman. And the highest level of shaman in Peru is Ultramasayuk, and also Ultramasayuks speak with the mountain spirits. And so he was training with this other shaman, and the shaman wouldn't give him his last initiation. And he kept wondering why wouldn't he? Anyway, ultimately he decided to work with another shaman, and he was told that when the shaman gave him his last initiation, he would give him half his medicine, half his power. A lot of his energy would go to the new shaman. And then I recognized that when someone dies a good death, all the good of them can come to us if we allow it. So the good of my dad, I believe, came to me, his knowledge, his wisdom, your son the same. So it's like sharing that, if that makes sense, sharing that beautiful wisdom of the universal love. And it's like death is the doorway that opens that up.
Yeah, I really feel like we have that word death is the wrong word. I mean, we're using it in a way that it's not true. Like a battery dies, it means it's no longer has nothing left in it. A person drops their physical body, but they're not dead. Like we don't seem to understand. Maybe it's because we don't, in many ways, we're not taught that we are not our bodies. Maybe that's part of it,
I think that's a part of it, but the other part and that's why the shamanic work has always fascinated me so much, is we never really talk about the little deaths. I mean, we have little deaths. You had a death, a part of your son died, but then you're reborn. You can be reborn, right, into a different configuration. And that's that whole fear of change. And, ultimately that's really what's going, it's funny, on a global level right now, we're experiencing this huge fear of change, and things are being taken off the table of what we're used to having. And we're really being given a huge shaman's initiation, in my opinion, right now, of not being afraid of change.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is huge. I think that is the one thing that is sort of the common denominator in all the things that are, I did a podcast last night just talking about the fear factor. And I feel like we have a menu right now, and there's something for everyone. If you listen to the news, you listen to whatever, you pick your fear. There's something for everyone, whether it's you're afraid of a virus, you're afraid of your money, or you're afraid of your neighbor, whatever it is, there's something that can be. And it's, if we really sort of take a look, step back from it, we don't think well when we're in fear. We don't make good choices in fear. We don't, when we're constantly in fear like that, there's that saying, running around like a chicken with your head cut off. That's how I see that what's happening right now. People are making decisions that they wouldn't from a rational point of view. People are not prepared for life. They're prepared, indoctrinated for fear. And it's your little trigger. Like, what do you fear today? I got something I can sell you for that, instead of, yeah, sure, be afraid. And it's like, when you're talking about as a child, your dad brought home a horse and said you could ride it. Where's all the, oh my God, I don't think I can't, what will the neighbors think? Or all that whole thing that we grew up with, an environment where go outside and play and learn about your environment. I mean, we played until, the sun went down outside in our environment without fear.
Yeah.
But today we're kind of training people to be in that fear. So your shaman and your shaman work and your medium work, you didn't have those when you were a child?
No, I didn't. It didn't start till after my dad died. Of course, that's when you ask questions, when a significant person in your life passes away, right? And so one of the first things I did was read Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's Death and Die, I remember. And then my mom had Gloria Steinemann's book, Revolution from Within. She said there's a meditation thing in the back, and she had tried it and had a lot of success. So she said, so I said, I'm going to try this. So I was really lucky. And it's funny when you opened up today and you said, go back to your little girl. Well, one of the meditations in the book was go back and meet your little girl. And that was the first meditation I did. And I'll never forget it, because there I was in my little red dress, and I talked to her, and I said, our dad has died. And she said, no, he hasn't, not where I am. And she showed me things that Dad and I had done that I had totally forgotten about. Riding on the back of the tractor when he was working the fields, and reading me stories as a kid, and all these things I'd forgotten. My dad, I kind of, over the years, things had happened, and I got kind of angry with them at times, and I'd forgotten all those lovely little childhood moments. And it was like that just came flooding back. And so I thought, wow, this is great. I'm self-healing. And so then it just kind of progressed from there. I was very busy at work. I had a busy family life. I had a full-time job. And so I would wake up in the night and go meditate to calm myself down. But it was so amazing to me that I could, delve into these other worlds. And that's how I started.
Like, it doesn't sound like you had any resistance to it.
Well, I didn't, but I didn't want to share it for the longest time. So where I worked at the city of Kamloops for Parks and Recreation, and there was a woman who taught yoga. And finally, I had to share it with someone, because I was just bursting with all this, excitement, right? Yeah. And so I told her, I said, this is what I'm doing. What do you think? And she said, well, I think it sounds, she was amazing. Like, thank gosh I confided in her. And she said, you can go higher. Like, you don't have to just, because what was happening is I was going to, I called her Wise One. She was like the first guide I ever met. And next night I thought, okay, I'm going to go higher. So I could see the staircase, and decided to climb the staircase. And that's when I got to the upper world, and I couldn't believe all the things I saw there. I was just amazed. So no, I didn't have resistance. I don't know why.
Yeah, it sounds like you just opened right up to it, like exploring, which is awesome, because that is how we find out about our world, and that there is so much more. And I think, even though there's a little bit of sometimes we mix up excitement we mistake it for fear when it's actually just excitement. Just like, because it kind of feels the same. Like you get that, ooh, what am I going to learn? And, like, I
think too, it really convinced me, and I still believe this, anyone can connect. And people are connecting so much quicker and faster, and it's so available. And I just encourage people that there's nothing to be afraid of, just to really be curious about how much more there is for us to access.
Without having somebody I'm just wondering, because we do hear about people who connect with some dark energies, like the Ouija board, for one, can often sort of, if people aren't aware of what they're doing. Do you see that as a problem, or?
Well, one of the things that the guides always say to me, and they just say it over and over, is whenever you're going to connect, you can just do a simple prayer. What I always get people to say is, I ask for the highest light, the highest love, and the highest truth. Mm-hmm. And if you see a guide, in your mind's eye, or there's energy, you say, are you from the highest light, highest love, highest truth? And if they're not, they have to leave. Mm-hmm. And if they're not, then I've had it happen. I remember this I thought he was a little Peruvian shaman guide, and I was really excited. I thought, oh, I've got a new guide. I'm so excited. I thought, I should ask him the whole highest light, love, truth thing. And I did, and he walked away. And I said, well, who are you then? He said, well, I can teach you a few things, but I'm not from those high levels. And he left.
Yeah, because there are different dimensions where, and that doesn't mean they mean us harm, but they may be mischievous. They may be, up to no good, or maybe earthbound spirits. Sometimes we can connect with that kind of energy, which is.
Well, I think you really want to, again, if you're going to connect, it's like you want to go to the highest level that you can, right?
Go to the top. Go straight to the top. None of this monkeying around with it.
Yeah, so that has worked every time for me, and I've taught so many people that, and I think it's really supported others as well. So,
as you were starting for your own journey, for your own curiosity, how did you get into the medium work? Because what's the difference between a shaman and a medium? Because not everyone is a shaman that is doing mediumship work or the clairs.
No, the medium work came as a huge surprise. I was doing one of my meditations. I would always follow I kind of got a formula for myself. We have a beautiful fireplace in our home. And I would imagine that I was, traveling up the fireplace. And as I did that, I would release, the day and anything that would take me away from what I was doing. And then I would get out into a forest landscape. And then I would go to Wise One. I called her my guide, Wise One, and ask her questions. And what really got me hooked was that I would ask her questions like, why does, my sister do blah, blah, blah? And she would always take it to a higher level. And I would always be so surprised at the answer that she would give me, because it was from a different perspective. So the one time I was journeying there and I saw a little boy. It was kind of like a glen that had a little, it was like a forest glen. I saw this little boy there, and I thought, well, that's weird. I didn't make that, because all along at this point, I thought I was making everything up. I didn't actually understand I was doing a journey. So I went over to him, and he said he was afraid. He had his head in his hands. And then I recognized him. There had been a little boy missing in one of the communities that was nearby. And I saw two huge angels. They were absolute. To this day, I've never seen angels so huge or amazing. And they said, we want to take him up the staircase of light. And so I told the little boy, and he said, well, I don't know them. I don't think I should go with them. So we talked for quite a while, and then finally he said he would, and he went up the staircase of light. So I thought, what in the world? I came back from the meditation, was completely confused. So I went to work, and there was a girl that I confided in all the time about all this. And she said, well, ask to see him again. And I said, well, I don't think that's how it works. And she said, yeah, I think that's how it works. Okay. So back I went, and he came. I asked him they hadn't found his body. That was the big thing. He was missing, but they hadn't found him. So I asked him what happened, and he showed me he was on his bike. Then he showed me him tumbling down the creek, and I could feel it in my tummy. I felt like I was gonna, be ill because it was so visceral.
Right.
But about 3 days later, he was found on Mother's Day, and he had ridden his bike. The creek was flooding. He had fallen in the creek. They did find him. So I went to my sister's birthday party, and his teacher was there. And everything I described about him, how he put his head in his hands, what he looked like, how he behaved, she said, oh, yeah, that was definitely his energy. So I was really, I was confused. I didn't think that was possible, to be honest. I'd been seeing my dad, but I just thought I was making it up. And, so then it was like the door literally opened, and a lot of people who had passed away started to ask me to give message. My boss's brother, that was so embarrassing. He kept saying, you have to tell him this. And I'm like, I'm not telling my boss that. We don't have that kind of relationship. Anyway, in the end, I told him I had a dream, and I had dreamt it. And so my boss was really good. He said, thank you. And we left it at that. So yeah,
that's a tough one. Because not everybody's open to, I mean, we still are living at a time where people actually believe this is it. There's nothing else. We just sort of came from the dirt and we go back to it. And it's it's a strange thing to me now when I think about how people actually are believing that that's it. Not just because of it, it feels like it's a hard way to live, expecting that there's nothing else. It feels like it, and I guess I just see it as so much freedom when you know that we're not here by accident. We're here for a purpose, and we, it's a playground. We're here, we get on this merry-go-round, we go spinning around. Some people fly off at different times, and then we leave, but we keep on, and we continue our growth, our expansion, our being. I always think of Einstein's energy cannot be destroyed. We're energy. So obviously, that's to take a different form. So, something that came up a while ago, actually, when I was listening to you being interviewed with Debbie Lang on the Kamloops community radio show. And what occurred to me was about sometimes people really think they want to talk to their deceased relatives, and they just seem to believe that, their whoever, Uncle Harry or whatever, is just hanging around waiting for you to talk to them, or hanging around their grave, which is another one. I mean, people go to the gravesite and they think that person is just still there, and that they haven't gone anywhere. What is your experience of meeting these people? What, are they just sitting around waiting for their relatives to talk to them, or they got other things to do?
Well, it's such a big question. When I first started doing the medium work, I would, and I continue to be very not nervous, but understanding the sacred contract that I carry to say that I'm actually talking to that person's loved one, because that's a huge thing. It's rare that I can't contact the person that that the person wants to talk to. And just to I'll give you a little bit of example. I had a mother and a father that wanted to contact their son, and the first thing I saw, and what I do, it's very visual for me. So the first thing that I see is what I start to explain to the family of what I'm seeing for them. And this was a bright, bright light, and the light was moving really fast, and it was kind of going everywhere. And I thought, well, this isn't very helpful because it's just a light, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. So then I saw the energy change, and he became more, he was a boy in his 20s, I guess, and he talked about music, and he started to explain a little bit what he was like in his human form. So afterwards, the mom said, I knew it was my son because I know he is that bright light now. So she had a lot of sensibilities, such as yourself.
Mm-hmm.
For the father, he wanted more concrete evidence that it was actually his son that we were speaking with. And at that point, I understood sometimes I connect to that higher spirit of the person, so what they've evolved into. And sometimes I'm talking more to the personality of the person, the way they were on earth. So they like to drive cars, they like music, they like to dance. And I had the experience of working with a First Nations band up north, and one summer, and I think it really honed my skills as a medium. I think everyone in the community decided they wanted to phone me. So I had phone call after phone call all summer. It helped me to trust myself and to trust the work. But there was this one particular man that had passed away that a lot of people must have loved because they all wanted to contact him. What was so interesting to me was that he would come each time, but a little bit differently. Because of course, the person that was calling would have had a different relationship with him. So when his mom called, he talked to her about, the things she would be interested in. When his best friend called, it was about partying and all the crazy stuff they'd done with music. And I was like, wow, this is fascinating, because it was like getting to see all the different aspects of this one person. And of course, we are multifaceted,
yes.
right?
Yes.
And so that taught me a lot that summer. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Well, yes, that it does answer the question, but more than that, what you tapped into that is that there's that human personality part, but then we don't stay in that, because you were saying that you tapped into a more evolved where they were at. So we don't stay exactly as we are here, in our physical personality. When we cross over, we continue to evolve. Is that, am I right?
And what you were saying previously about death and how we are infinite beings, that's really the message they want to get across. That's really what they want to talk about. I mean, they will tell me the more mundane things because they know that the loved one wants to hear that. Mm-hmm. They want to hear those things for them. But what the underlying message really is, I'm okay. I love you. I forgive you, or please forgive me if there's that has to happen. But it's an amazing place here, and we're good, and that the spirit is infinite, and that is consistent with every reading, and they want us to know that. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it would be hard to just share that message if you for some people, I'm sure, if you don't give me something of the physical that I relate to, like some tangible thing that I know it's you, and yep. and then maybe to get the more expanded understanding. But I was doing something about grief. I was interviewing somebody about grief, but they weren't a medium, and they said to me, and I said, oh, but I am going to be talking to a medium shortly, so I'm going to ask them this. And my question was, because as we process grief on this earth, and it has a lot to do with our perception of what did we actually lose something? I don't feel like I lost my son at all. I mean, I just feel like he was done. He's off surfing around the universe now, and I always know where he is, and I don't have to worry about him at all. And I just know he's expanding. He was done on planet Earth. I get that part. So for me, there was a physical grief, but at the same time as a kind of like, hey, that's pretty cool, because I know he's around. Like, sometimes he tells me jokes. I just can feel him. He always in the vehicle with me. That's always the fun thing. Because when I have a fun memory of getting in his truck, which was full of his garbage, because he was just him in his truck, right? Come on, man, let's go for a ride. And then he'd have a Coke bottle or a pop bottle of some sort, and he'd start singing something, and then he'd use the mic. It was his microphone. He pointed at me, and it was my turn to sing, and he was so serious about it. And I always used to think how bizarre that was, but it's a fun memory, right? That I can I know he's still around. But my question was about grief. When the person dies, regardless of what they died from, do you ever hear from them saying they're grieving? Like, do they have regrets about their actual death, if they, whether it was, you know, suicide or accident or illness or anything like that? Do they ever express a grief, a feeling of that they lost something when they've left, especially prematurely, or what we call prematurely?
It's such a good question. And prior we were talking about the different, the shamanic work and the medium work. And the thing that I've come to really appreciate the last couple of years is when people come for a medium session, every time, if they're available to it, I provide them with a shamanic healing as well, because that allows some of the grief to be taken from their body. I recognize that just trying to, exactly you were saying about coughing, when we're talking about energy, huge energy comes in the room when we do the medium work, and there can be real big releasing from the people because they are grieving. And so it's just as if I can get them on the table and do some beautiful clearing for them, that's a wonderful way for them to release some of the grief. But when we die, the teachings of the shamanic culture is that we do a recapitulation or a life review. Everyone does it. Nobody gets away from that. So lately, what spirits have been telling me, as the people are going, as we are going through our grief of losing them, we're helping them with their recapitulation. So we're doing that life review with them. So in me doing that, what I thought was self-healing with my dad, I recognize now I was helping him to heal. He was helping me to heal the grief, because at one point I remember walking, looking at the hospital, thinking about him being there. He died of cancer. And I heard this voice say, I'm not there anymore. Please stop looking at that hospital. Like, I'm not there. Like, I'm in a way better place now. And that was my first kind of, whoa. So it's rare that they talk about grief, but they will support the person who's grieving, or I've done, it sounds funny, but like counseling from the other side to bridge some of those disconnects that have happened, and say, yeah, I'm sorry that, especially if it's abuse, or, I'm sorry that I treated you that way. That was unfair. That was not your fault, that kind of thing. And so there can be huge healing with that.
So I wonder if then how because a lot of people think there's a certain amount of time. Your spouse or your child or whoever, your parent died so many months ago, you should be moving on from that. There are people who have that opinion, that there's a certain time frame, which of course I know from the multiple people that have died in my family, close family members, that each one is different, and depending on where you're at in your relationship with them. And it's going to take a different amount of time where you go through your anger and sorrow and just emptiness sometimes, and then, joy and whatever. It's a cycle. It goes up and down. It doesn't stay in one place. But I'm wondering if the period that we do go through that is in relation to how long they're going through their life review, if there's a connection.
I really think it is. And I think if we're stuck, then I think that, because we are connected, I think that stalls some of the healing that can happen. And of course, because I do this work, but I think, that's why support for people is so important. Whether they do the kind of work I do, or they go for Reiki or healing touch, or whatever they choose to do, just to support the process for them will support the process for the loved one, for sure.
Yeah, because even in some of the different religious traditions, praying for the dead is always encouraged, and that's probably why, because we're helping them to do that kind of work, their healing work. And I have also, and I heard this from different people, that sometimes when someone dies and they have had a very rough life, like done terrible things to other people, let's say, they go to almost like a hospital where they're surrounded by their guides, so that while they do the life review, they are supported in going through that process. It's sort of like a quarantine to help them to see what the harm they did to others and to themselves or whatever, and put it in the perspective from the light, not the human guilt and shame and all the stuff that sometimes goes with that. Have you seen that?
I have, especially when I early was doing it. A couple of clients came in with suicide, and I saw places of rest for these energies, just to rest before. Yeah, I have seen that, absolutely.
So we can know that we are supported in the judgment and stuff that happens here on planet Earth is not what happens on the other side.
Oh, not at all. No.
It's all love. Isn't that cool? I mean, it just kind of puts this life in perspective for me, because it really does lay it out. Like, there's no manual, there's no map. You just, to think that we're supposed to do it perfect is ridiculous. We've got to find our way and try things out. We're going to make mistakes, but it's kind of cool to know that we have this support from the other side, from our loved ones or from spirit guides, or like in your case, working with your shaman work, to bring forward that wisdom to help us to do this journey. Why do you think we do have that help? Why don't they just abandon us here and figure it out, you little humans?
Well, that's such a big question. But just to pick up on Henkel Wesselman, he's a shaman from Hawaii, and I've taken a couple of courses from him and read some of his books. And I remember the one thing that he talked about that I just loved. He said, your ancestors are your biggest cheering squad. So I mean, they really want you to succeed. And when he said that, I really got me thinking about all our beautiful loved ones on the other side that really, they want us to succeed. But why do the spirit guides help us, and why do they care? We ourselves are such powerful and amazing spirits, and I think that's taken me a long time to trust. I was very happy to acquiesce to some of the beautiful energies that I get to see. Mother Mary, Kuan Yin, all these beautiful energies that I've been able to channel. And so I would give, all my accolades to them. But when they started to say to me, well, Therese, you have to understand you're a spirit and you have amazing energy as well. And I'm like, what? That was a concept that I struggled with a bit. And I'm still learning to accept it. And so each of us are these incredible spirits who have chosen again to come into this human form. So it's not so much that they would, and we're all in this together. The guides are in it, the angels are in it. We're all in this energy together. We just happen to be the ones that are on Earth right now. So
they have a vested interest in us succeeding in this experiment called human on planet Earth.
Yeah.
And some of them are us. I mean, there's that kind of an idea that some of them, I guess this maybe is getting into something a little bit more, but my understanding is this little piece of us that squishes down into the human body is just one facet. We're part of the whole, but there's also different parts of us that are on the other side, like our higher self or oversoul, whatever you want to call it. So we're not, we're just not these small people, or might be small people, but we're not small energies, and that we're not supposed to give our power away to guides and angels and so forth. They're here to help us, but we don't submit to them. We collaborate with them, cooperate, kind of thing.
Yeah. And I mean, that's like anything. It's just common sense, isn't it? I mean, if you told me something and it doesn't resonate with me, then I would think, well, that's Catherine's opinion, but it doesn't resonate with me. Mm-hmm. And it's the same with me telling you what I'm telling you, or anyone listening to this broadcast, for that matter. And it's the same with the guides. If it lands with you, and I'm always, that's kind of my barometer. If what I'm being told makes sense, it augments my life, it grows corn for me. I love that saying from the shamanic culture, you know, does it work in my life? Then I'm going to embrace it and be thrilled and grateful that I received that information. I remember one of the shaman who taught the last course I took with him. He's from Peru. He's a wonderful man. And he said, really, all I can do is help you remember who you truly are. And, you know, the other thing I think sometimes we lose sight of, it's such a privilege to be in the human form. I mean, this is an amazing dimension with our five senses. And if we can allow ourselves to let go of some of the human foibles of doubt and fear, this is an incredible world that we live in. I mean, I know right now it's we're kind of feeling rocky, but it is an amazing world.
But, you know, how many people do we hear saying, I don't belong here, or I don't fit here, or I don't, you know, they have that sense that they were sent here, and that, I mean, that's sometimes what we hear when people commit suicide, is that they just can't handle this. Do you think that it's true, or that they, because we forget who we are from the other side when we come into this body? Do you think that this is a part of this, you know, people, I hear people are lining up to get a human body to have this experience. So then you would think there would be the sense of what a precious gift life is. But we do have people saying, I'm on the wrong planet. This does not work for me at all. Do you think it's because they've forgotten, or do you think it's their first time here? And I'm going into the idea of reincarnation here, because some people don't believe in that. But if you did.
Well, if I have a client and they come and they talk about that, I mean, really it's easier for me when I'm connected with the guides, because there's so many different variables. But I have seen for people exactly what you just said. They signed up for it, but they didn't recognize that it was going to be a denser energy. They're just not used to the dense energy of the planet. They're not used to just the way this planet feels. And it was funny, at the very beginning, we talked about the fact that I mean, I love being on the earth. I love being in a physical body. So I'm grateful for that, and I feel grounded. But some of these people, you're right, that come to see me or phone me, they're completely uncomfortable. They don't like it. I think some of that can be attributed to the fact that maybe this is their first time on earth, but also I really trust in the shamanic healing. And I think sometimes if they can do a little bit of personal work, release some of the fears maybe that was laid on them from childhood, do a bit of soul retrieval, I really feel that can augment their life, and they can feel safer in this body and in this life.
Do you think there's any connection? You know, we were talking about how grounded you are and how you grew up on the earth, you know, and I'm just kind of made this little bell going off in my head. How much of our world today, children who have never actually walked on the grass in bare feet, they've grown up in a city, in a, you know, apartment or a house with concrete all around them, and have no, like I grew up outside, you know, making mud pies, running through the bush, and in Northern Ontario and in Manitoba, and, you know, I lived in different places, but it was always outside. I mean, we didn't have a playroom in the house. We had outside, you know, take your stick and go run outside. So I'm just wondering if because we know that when you get in an airplane, being away from the earth, it ages you. It can cause different, you know, health problems and so forth, because you're away from that pull of the earth, the energy of the earth itself. Kind of wondering if we're seeing an increase of this feeling of discombobulated or don't belong, or, you know, this isn't my environment, because we're not having enough opportunities for kids to be grounded, to feel their environment. I don't know if that's a
I think it's a huge thing. I'm Sandra Ingerman. She's another woman. I just love her teachings and all the books that she has. And she talks a lot about the importance of teaching kids to trust the earth, teaching kids about being outside. I remember one of the first things we were told when we took the course was that in Western society, we're cut off at the neck. What they mean by that, we're so caught in our head. We're so mental construct that we've lost the connection to our physical bodies. So this is where we hold, they always talk about it, the word they give for the fear and doubt and worry is hucha. So they say we hold this hucha in our bodies, and of course that causes dis-ease. And so when we're outside, they don't call her Mother Earth, they call her Pachamama. So Pachamama can take our hucha, and the word that they use is miqui. Miqui means to compost this energy back into life force for us. And they're very simple concepts, but so profound and can be so supportive for people and children. Absolutely. Being outside is so.
I think about the energy you see, kids can't sit still in the classroom today and people complain about that. But I remember we had energy too. But we rolled down the hill. We rolled on the grass. We laid on the grass, looked at the clouds for hours, reading comic books and whatever. We were on the earth. We had our hands in the dirt. But mind you, we also we didn't have them spraying stuff all over it. We didn't have, we could walk on the earth with great safety. And maybe that's a phase that we can move back to, is to recognize that, this is actually making us sick, not just because it's a pesticide or it's whatever, but because we're caging ourselves away from the earth.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things in the healing technique that I do so that I love the shamanic kind of formula. You release first when you have someone, then you balance, and then you reinform. So you bring energy in. And one of the ways to do that is to ask someone a place that they were on the Mother Earth that they loved, and then describe it. Say, I was by the waterfall and the water and all that. And so then you encourage them to breathe that in, to say, okay, you're part of the waterfall, and to reintroduce all those beautiful healing qualities of Mother Earth, Pachamama, into their bodies, so that you can start to work with that disconnect that has happened. Yeah.
So you are doing, you do private sessions to do this kind of work. Can you talk to us about, so that people understand it's available? It's something that, I don't want people just to watch this and think that'd be really great if where do they go? And I mean, in Kamloops area, they can connect.
Yeah, I mean, you can Google, because it isn't, I mean, it's certainly not mainstream. So it's not that, you're going to look for a doctor but you can Google a shaman in your area. I'm just trying to think of, there's other healing modalities that are beautiful as well, not just shamanism. That just seems to be the one that I really resonated with. I think anytime, there's Reiki, there's healing touch, there's the bars, access bars are a wonderful modality. So anytime you're just breath work, integration breath work, some people do, anytime you're kind of just surrendering really to just saying, okay, I'm surrendering and letting some of my fears and doubts and worries go, then your well-being will be supported for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And probably, I mean, the best way to really find a healer or helper is also to start talking to people, so that you can get a referral to somebody you trust that have that experience. So there's different places that sell natural foods or crystals, or places that are more into that kind of healing work. But I just think you need to do your discernment. You need to check into people. Just don't bring your personal everything into a stranger's arms and give up your power. That's not what it's about.
No, it's not. And that's really important. So using your discernment is really, really important. And word of mouth is pretty much, I don't advertise anywhere. That's where I get all my clients. And I totally agree. It's best if you have a referral. Absolutely.
So the other thing that I find really interesting, that aside from this kind of work, so you're doing counseling, you're doing working with people individually, but you have this Wise Woman journal, and that was created a couple of years ago.
Just last year, my girlfriend and I were going for a walk, and we had been working with a journal that had been done by two beautiful women out of Ireland, and we'd worked with it for a couple of years. And I just loved it because it's kind of a way at the end of the day to say what you're grateful for, to close off your day, and kind of just for you. So I write in mine every day. I have now, this is my 3rd year. So we got together, Erin and I, and we thought, why don't we make our own? So we did. And it's really been fun. I work a lot on my own with one-on-one with clients, which I really love. But this was nice to have collaboration with other women. So then we invited in Rebecca Munch, and she did the illustrations, and her illustrations are just beautiful. I love them. So I do a channeling. So I do channeling for Sedona Journal of Emergence. So we have a channeling once a month. So January has a channeling. It has a crystal. Erin's written about crystals. We have self-empowerment for women. And then, they just journal for themselves for the month. And then we do, February, another channeling, another crystal. And it's been really fun. And we've been doing these Wise Women gatherings once a month and really having lots of fun creating.
So are the gatherings in person that you do?
Yeah, the gatherings are in person for now. I thought about doing some maybe online ones. The gatherings are just an opportunity for us to get together as women. And usually we'll do a shamanic journey. We'll do some information on crystals. We'll do some sharing. And it's been fun. It's worked out really well.
I love it. It's amazing when some of the things we're doing today, though. I think about the old pioneers, the settlers, the early days, sitting around with their quilting bees or knitting, or baking or whatever. They were talking about these things too. That's why we call them old wives' tales. I mean, they were spinning their yarn of wisdom in such a natural way. And today, we're all so busy in our own directions. I mean, if somebody invited me to get together and cook with them, I'd be like, yeah. I've done that once with my sister and my mother. That I have done, because if we were doing something big, making fruitcake, because we made tons of it. But generally speaking, I always think of these things as solitary tasks. I'm in my kitchen cooking, or I'm sewing in my sewing room, or whatever it is. And I find that I feel like there's a part of me, maybe an old me, maybe a previous life me, that really loved a quilting bee, where that kind of wisdom was coming through. And, my Irish heritage, I'm thinking of that, the way they were with processing the death, the body, the healing. And there are other cultures who do that too, where the women are preparing the body. And I think, my goodness, we have so much anxiety and fear around death. But in those days, a few hundred years ago, even, people were prepared they knew that part of life was that people were going to die. And they had rituals to help them to go through it, to embrace it, as in birthing, the midwives and the transition wives, so to speak. I feel like we need, or not need, but it would be really beautiful if we could get back to that a lot more. And it sounds like your Wise Women venture is similar. Now, I was just thinking about something, though. You have a journal that people use. Is that something that, say, a person in Nova Scotia or Quebec or somewhere else in Canada could get the journal and maybe do
absolutely
similar to the...
Yeah, we're doing another one for 2021. So we have a website, and if anybody wants the journal for next year, we'll have the journals for sale. And I sort of see it as a big community, even though we've got the small ones in Kamloops, the gathering. But all these women, because we have women in Manitoba and United States that have the journals, So sometimes I'm kind of, at night, I'm writing in my journal and I think about all these women all over the place, kind of writing in the same journal with the same intention. So it is a way of creating community for women, even if we're not.
I love that.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it is. It's like the modern day quilting bee. It's just happening because that's the beauty of having the technology we have today, the written work, the internet,
www.3wisewomen.ca. So 3 wise women.
I like that. I like that. There's a kind of a joke about that on Christ's birth. If it had been 3 wise women instead of 3 wise men, they would have had the supper cooked, the manger cleaned out, and they would have brought all the necessities, none of this incense and I just thought it was funny.
I heard that. It was funny. I love it.
Yeah, we have to be able to laugh at ourselves, especially in our human form, which is really funny. The shaman journey and the medium, like sometimes we through media and whatever, we hear about the shaman. So the shaman takes on a different form. So I was just wondering if that's a true, like, I don't know if it's the Aboriginal cultures where say I don't know if it was the medicine man within the native communities that Aboriginal communities that did the shaman work and took on a form of a different animal, changed shape shifting. That's the word.
Yeah, I've heard of it. That's really amazing. If anyone is interested in shamanism, I would highly recommend some of Sandra Ingerman's books. She is absolutely incredible. My training originally came from the Peruvian culture. And in Peru, there's the indigenous people are the Carol. And the story goes that when the conquistadors came to Peru, many of the beautiful indigenous people of the land went into the high mountain passes. And so they weren't affected by the Spanish coming and invading the country because the Inca had built beautiful temples and in the city of Cusco, which was their sacred city, the rock work and the things you see there are amazing. I've been able to go there about 3 times. So then the idea or the prophecy was that the Carol would come down when the time was right, when the world was ready to learn this medicine. And in the 70s, they actually did that. And I have a friend that was there actually when they came down, all dressed in their beautiful robes, and people couldn't believe it. And there they were, and with this beautiful medicine. And I've been able to meet some of the shamans from those places. It's about a 3-day walk down to the Sacred Valley for them. And their prophecies were that eagle and condor would come together. So they would teach us, and we would receive that medicine and pass it on. And so it just seems like such a beautiful sacred contract that they had given us permission to use this medicine for our own healing and then asked us to pass it on. The last time I was in Peru, the chief of the one, he said, we know that our people are dying. There's only 300 of us left in this one community. So we know we have to pass it on. So it's very philosophical, this very idea that, change is coming and we have to pass it on, and North Americans could use this. And really kind of the basis of it is that whole cut off at the neck. We're disconnected from the earth. Just all the things we've been talking about. We're disconnected from our own bodies. And so all of that made so much sense to me that I really embraced it for myself. The one teacher we had, Jose Luis Herrar, told amazing stories about some of the shamans in Peru, and it was just lovely to hear them. But it doesn't really transcend to, a white woman offering shamanic healing in her home here in Canada. But what has always amazed me is that magic and power and the power of the medicine can still shift and change people's lives. So I don't shapeshift into a jaguar, but the energy of that jaguar or of that eagle or of that bear can really support us.
Yeah, and what really comes to me is this: we have a illusion in our mind about what a shaman looks like, or what a medicine person looks like, or, you know, that this certain color skin, certain robes and what have yous. And I mean, it's just clear to me that it's energy, and it can be embodied in any of us, and we can all use these tools. But I think, you know, you've used the word sacred several times, and I think that's really important. This is not a game. This is not something it requires respect and reverence, and that understanding of who we are as a spirit, and so forth. What is coming to me right now is, because, you know, a lot of my focus right now, for some reason, spirit inspired for sure, because I didn't plan to do this exactly, but I'm really focusing on women, empowered women, women who feel success, and not necessarily in the terms of what society calls success, but her living a really best life. Do you see the coming years as the time when women are going to finally come back to that balanced power where we, I'm not a big fan of the matriarchy, patriarchy, one end of the spectrum, the other. I'm a fan of the coming together and really weaving that energy together. So do you see women shifting into our roles more naturally now, gravitating towards it? Do you see that happening in the next 20 years, 30 years?
I do. And it's funny, I just want to segue a little bit. When I first learned all about the Peruvian shamanism, I was very enamored by it all, interested in it all, but I didn't give myself complete permission to do this work until I traveled to the United Kingdom. And I went to Wales and Ireland and England. And I recognized, and you were talking about your Irish heritage, that those were the witches. They were the wise women. They were the midwives. They were empowered women. They were wise women. And then I thought, okay, I'm not expropriating anything when I want to play a drum and a rattle and sing songs and do ceremonies, because this is in my blood as well. I'm not an Indigenous woman. I'm not a Peruvian, but I can be proud of my own heritage. And so I think, and again, that's that ancestral lineage working through us. So yes, I really believe that not only, you know, I think we have to give ourselves permission. Women are powerful. We are powerful. And that's just the truth. And so now giving ourselves permission to not keep ourselves small.
Yeah. And the world needs
the
strength of women. I mean, you think about the strength of birthing and what's necessary to go through that process. Think of it on a grander scale. We need this power. We need this wisdom. We need the wise woman to be fully embracing who she really is. And I think, for years, women have really conformed to the marketing image of how we're supposed to look, what our significance is in the world. And you could have, certain levels of success if your father or your husband or your brother gave you permission to. And we're still seeing that in the world in some places. But I think that we've had some really great people pave the way for us. And I don't want to say we owe it to them, but my goodness, what a waste of a good paved road if we don't take it, It's just...
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, when I first started, I connected with, my wise one, the person I thought was wise one. And when I realized when I did the Wise Women Journal, it was almost 20 years later, that I truly believe every woman has a wise one within them. And I believe that the journal can help to excavate that through journaling, through our pen, through our, doing a little bit of ceremony for ourselves, a little bit of ritual for ourselves, to release some of these old stories that have been told about us that aren't true, that we're not good enough, that we're not pretty enough. And all of that is so ridiculous and so unimportant. And so starting to get real with each other. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're doing here. Let's get real. And there's some connection from a scientific. They're starting to notice some of these things, that the connection with the pen and the hand and the writing to the part of the brain that is really important. That it's not there when you're using a phone or even typing. There is a real flow of energy, and of course, automatic writing, that's how they do it with a longhand kind of thing. And that tells you that we do have this connection, and that the communication can flow through us through the pen, and which is why the pen is mightier than the sword, right?
That's right.
No, I mean, somebody is really giving me stuff today because I'm really picking up on stuff. I just keep getting these light bulbs, and I'm loving it. So if people want to know more about your work, or if they're, do you do speaking or seminars? Or
I haven't really done a lot of it, but this has been really fun. So yeah, I could do more for sure.
Yeah. So they could.
I do teach, and I've taught I've taught up north, just some Indigenous cultures up there, and of course I teach here in Kamloops. But yeah, I'm open.
Well, and all they have to do is go to your website and get your information, which is Crystal. What's your website?
www.crystalclearinsights.ca.
Wow. This has been fascinating. I really feel like we've only just barely brushed the breadcrumbs off the surface of this big loaf of wonderful bread.
We'll have to do it again. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And for everyone who's watching, don't forget, subscribe to the YouTube channel. You never miss a video. The podcast, go to the website, lgrcc.com, and you'll find my blog and all the information on guests, and you can read Therese's bio there as well. But I just think the time is now, and there's more of us on the planet, more of us waking up, and we can really do something here, something phenomenal, something wonderful, especially with wise women to share with us. That's the beauty of it. Thank you so much, Therese.
Welcome. It's been wonderful. Thanks.